why two grown men won't go to the woods just outside our town. Back in 2023, me and my partner were both living at his mom's house. Most days we'd get home from work about 5 p.m., get dressed, and then we would go to these woods in the hills just outside the town we live in. For context, these woods as a whole are 12 miles long and 4 miles wide. There's breaks in the woods of farmland and fields, creating separate woods over these hills with different names. You can walk through these woods if you want. There's paths winding through most of the woods as trails. And if you want to walk over the span of hills from one side to the other, you can if you really want to. Just most of it's through the woods and uphill if you're coming from the south. The one we always went to is called Down Woods. So me and my partner would go to these woods nearly every day after we finished work, just to go for a walk or a smoke or both. We went about doing our usual routine, walking around and talking about our days, following the trail in these woods that loops around a large set of trees with more around you on the outside. Would kind of look like a messed donut from bird's eye view, I guess. We were walking on the path that takes you back up towards the top of the woods, point A. See photo below this paragraph. That path also takes you down towards the car park once you get to the meeting point of all the paths. When we see this man in the distance walking down the path at point B are one of the trails that just goes up into the woods beyond Down. We've still got to get to the meeting point of all the paths to get back to the car. At this point, he's pretty far away from us still, but I had a bad feeling because the first thing I noticed about this man when we got closer was that he was wearing office shoes and carrying a pair of hiking boots while seemingly on a walk in the woods. We were talking about this as we were walking up and laughing about how strange it was. The guy was walking faster than us as he was going downhill and reached the meeting point of the paths a few minutes before we did, but we could see him the whole time. When he got to the meeting point of the paths, all he did was stand there. He didn't do anything. He just stood and was looking around. I had a really bad feeling at this point, as he didn't even look like he was lost. He just looked like he was waiting for something. Me and my partner were pretty weirded out at this point, and were thinking about turning around and heading back down into the woods and go back around the long way just to get away from this guy's weird-ass vibes. In the end, we decided that walking back down into the woods would ultimately look way too suspicious, as the man had definitely seen us walking up the path towards him the same time we'd seen him walking down. So we just kept walking up. The whole time, this guy's still just standing there looking around with these shoes in his hands. Having no other choice than to walk past this guy to get to the path down to the car park, we went up and passed him. Getting close to him, I saw something that worried me more than it weirded me out. The guy had a backpack on, and there was a handle coming out of. 100, the handle of a hammer or an axe. I knew it couldn't have been else. He hadn't been on a phone at all, the whole time we'd seen him, not even when he was just loitering around. Just more and more stuff adding up and freaking a man out. As we walked past him and started down the path towards the car park, the guy decides he now knows where he needs to go, without getting a phone out or a compass, nothing, and starts walking down behind us. At this point, I was freaking out, and so was my partner, who doesn't usually get paranoid about stuff like this because I do it all the time for no reason. But this guy was not right. There were no other cars in the car park out mine, so he had no reason to be walking there. We were walking as fast as we could without running away from this guy. After what felt like a lifetime, we got to car, locked the doors, and drove off. I didn't even look back. To this day, I think about that guy and how strange he was acting. But then again, I think about how strange we were probably acting, and maybe the poor guy was simply on a walk. Cut to just the other week, and me and partner are at our friend's house for their birthday, just hanging out, meeting their other friends. We haven't met before, having a blast. But as usual with every small group hangout, it got late, and we started talking about weird experiences we'd had and spooky encounters. Obviously, we told everyone about our encounter with this really strange man in the woods. A couple of the girls at this hangout work at a reserve called Fine Court. It's one of the woods in the hills I've been talking about. They seemed pretty rattled by the story we had told. and said that they had one that would make it worse, but they had to tell the group now. Plus, we needed to hear. One evening at work, E was on a closing shift with her manager, and they'd been cleaning up the cafe and doing final checks when E's manager tells her that he's good doing the rest by himself and that she can just go home. Who doesn't want to hear that? So off she goes to her car, sits there for a bit to chill and roll and cigarette before driving home. Later that night, she gets a text saying, "Don't ask, just don't come into work tomorrow." He finds out that after she left work, her manager had finished cleaning up like he said and gone to his car to leave. Getting into his car, a man approached him from out of the woods and started wrestling with him, trying to steal his car keys. Managing to get the man off and get into his car, the manager drove away and called the police. After talking to police, they connected some dots of a call they'd had earlier that evening from a concerned neighbor living in a village a couple miles from Fine Court, reporting a suspected burglary of one of her neighbors. Another call from a mental health institute in a town about as far away as ours from these woods, from the opposite direction, saying one of their patients had escaped. Turns out after the police put the whole story together, this man escaped, got a haircut, and then walked miles to this village in the middle of nowhere. Broke into this house he thought was abandoned. It was actually the home of an elderly couple. The man was completely disabled and wheelchair-bound, and his carer was his wife. The man actually murdered the elderly lady and just left the man in the house before leaving and walking into the woods, wandering around them and looking for someone with a car he could steal. That's when he ended up at Fine Court and tried to take his manager's car, running off into the woods again to find someone else. Me and my partner are so sure this is the same man we saw acting suspicious at Winddown all that time ago, as their story was from the same month as ours was, and the time frames matched up perfectly to when we would have seen him after he had tried to steal the manager's car and ran back off into the woods again. The police caught him the next day just wandering around in the woods up there. He was following us back down to the car, but who's gonna jump two guys in an open space where one of us could have easily made it to the road? I think he was trying to freak us out and get us to go back into the woods when he stopped at that meeting point and was loitering around. IDK, this still horrifies me to this day, and I just needed to get it off my chest and share this with someone. I'm sorry if this is extremely long-winded and badly written. I promise I was doing my best to explain the story well and tired to explain the layout of the woods as best I could.